He was a great favorite when he came to the office. He was a big, tall man, and he would envelop you in an enormous hug. And when he focused his attention on you, you felt like you were the only person in the world.
He would call you up and, you know, there was a rabbi, there was an Irishman, you know, he'd start in with a joke. He's a born storyteller.
Well, I always thought of Sims as the most sexy Reform rabbi. I always thought of him as a sexy Reform rabbi because I always felt that he was very wise and yet very kind, and also really good looking. So it was a very nice combination, and he had a great sense of humor. So I thought if I had a problem in my life that I wanted to confide in somebody, it would be Sims.
He had this way of greeting you that you had to respond to. And I think Sims was a magnet. He was a magnet for other people. And I think, you know, our lives are better because of knowing him and the books that he's created.
Sims loved to talk on the phone, and so when I would have to call him to discuss some part of the book, he would answer the phone and say, "Denise, Denise, darling, how are you?" And so we would have these free-ranging conversations. We'd talk about our families. We'd talk about other illustrators. He was always involved with other people's work and what they were doing and new books that were coming out.
I think of him as the fiddler on the roof. He was the really joyful illustrator who brought playfulness and color into the American picture book as few other people had.
When Sims won the Caldecott, he had to give a speech. And he announced to me that he was going to sing. And I thought, sing? But then I realized that nobody would offer to sing unless he had a good voice. And he did. When he started to sing, the entire room just fell silent because he had this deep, rich voice. It was just a wonderful moment.
At the time when he was involved in forming the Graphic Artists Guild, that he was providing a source for artists who questioned certain aspects of the industry to find out about that. So, in a sense, he was taking on under his wing a bunch of artists, and that, like I said, most of us needed that. If we didn't have an agent, and most of us as freelancers didn't have readily at hand a way of finding out how the industry worked, and what the other side was asking, or how a contract was put together. And all those things. So the Graphic Artists Guild provided a kind of source or a safety net for artists. I, in a sense, tried to become that later in my life as a teacher. But Sims, in that group of people that surrounded him and was part of that shaping of the Guild, understood that piece. And that is something that, you know, he had to have a mind for. He had to have the pull towards it, but he had to have the mind for it.
I don't like doing things like this, you know, talking in public or giving speeches, but Sims would be loving this right now, because he would be the type of guy I would go to and call and say, "Oh, I have to, you know, go on camera and talk about this illustrator, author." "Oh, Lane, it'll be okay." You know, "Don't worry about it." So he's probably up there laughing his head off right now.
You know, with Sims, it was always, he had a vision for the book, and we respected that vision and worked with him as an editor. I would just try to get some clarity if there was any clarity I thought needed in the words. But I think as far as the art, his vision was there, and we respected that. He knew what he was doing. He had done so many books before that we collaborated and supported him.
I think what I love about Sims' work is that his vision of a book is very seamless and very integrated. It is a whole experience in the Sims Tabak world, and he thinks of everything from the overall architecture of the book, the telling of the story, using all of the visual elements, to all the nooks and crannies of design and type and hand lettering and fonts. So Postcard is such a great example of that, because it's not the usual 32-page picture books, but it has a lot of components to it. But it really showcases really the care and the love and the attention he shows to everything.
Sims would begin a book first by discussing it with Regina Hayes, who was our publisher at the time, and his editor at Viking. And so he would discuss his ideas with her, but then the first thing that we would see from him is this little dummy, and he would do a little dummy like this for every book. It's a little gem-like representation of what the book would be, and in this dummy he completely worked out every detail of what the book would ultimately be. But I want you to see that basically he starts out with this and ends up with this, and there's not much change in between the two. This little dummy measures 3 by 4 inches, and for each of the books he's published, he composes a small dummy like this.
He was an incredible perfectionist and lavished care and attention on those books, down to the smallest detail of the end papers or the back of the jacket, designing a typeface for each book, many of which he hand-lettered. When he was doing the die-cut books, of course, he had to be so meticulous. Everything had to line up absolutely perfectly, and it always did. You know, he was a great craftsman in addition to a great artist.
I think what I love about his work is that there's almost no divide between the text and his artwork. And that's mainly because he tends to like to use hand lettering for most of his text. So texturally, it blended. It was an integral part of the whole Sims Tabak world. His voice and his artwork was just one, both visually and and when you read it. So and he has an opinion about when it's not his hand lettering, what the font should be. And he would make all those choices. He has an understanding of type that it would be foolish for me not to accept. I learned so much from him in this whole process.
Working with Sims, I always knew his art was different because the details had so much. It was just, I loved his use of color, but the zany details and the presence of the characters that was in the details. You would get a sense of these little guys who everybody was, and there was just so much to look at. And it was funny and witty and light and just totally charming. So I met Sim's daughter, Emily, and we were talking about what a great dad he was, what a wonderful person he was. And she told me that she had saved all the postcards and letters he had sent her when she was a kid, when she was homesick at camp. And she talked about how she'd be in her cabin and it would conjure up his jokey presence and his generous spirit. And I was like, well, we have to make this into a book. You have these cards. And so we embarked upon the project. And it took Sims many years, but he wanted to get it right. And I knew he was on track when he said to me, I haven't felt this good about a book since I was working on a book about that old lady and a fly. And that worked out pretty well, so I knew that this one would too.
She swallowed the cow to catch the dog. She swallowed the dog to catch the cat. She swallowed the cat to catch the bird. She swallowed the bird to catch the spider. She swallowed the spider to catch the fly. I don't know why she swallowed the fly. Perhaps she'll die.
I'd rather have a ham on rye.
And she had a frog on the fly.
She did it in one try.
His energy came and went, so we just tried to help him out as much as we could, and Ryan Tomain, who was the designer, was fabulous with him. I think really helped him out with the typography and just did any legwork that he could do to get the book to happen. But Sims would get bursts of energy and then send us stuff, and we raced the book to publication, and happily we got it out before he died. I mean, we really wanted a physical book for him to see, and we were able to do that, which was great.
I remember just recently, a couple months before he died, talking about you know, the postcards from camp. He just really, that was really important for him to finish that book, and it probably kept him going because he just wanted to get that book out. And
I got a phone call out of the blue from Sims, who told me that he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and that he wanted his archive to come to the Carle Museum. And as you can imagine, that was a very bittersweet call, but it also spoke volumes for what Eric and Barbara Carle have done in terms of creating a museum. And I just said, whatever I can do to be of help. We decided to take the Sims's great books, the 8 great books that he did, and not that his other books aren't great either, but that was really the core of also what we could manage as well. And one of those books was Postcards from Camp. So we have the great pleasure and privilege of owning the original art for that book, and sadly, what an extraordinary way to go out. We are happily, we are planning an exhibition of Sims's work for the fall of 2014, which will be a mini retrospective of his career. It was a commitment that I made to the family that as soon as we could, in terms of our scheduling, we would put Sims on the calendar.
When asked what is Sims' book, what's the takeaway, and the takeaway would be a smile. And that, for some reason, your day is a little brighter. And that, again, had to do with his use of color and that wonderful wit that he had.
Last year, I was awarded a Caldecott honor for a book I did, and it's funny because before thinking of my parents or my wife or anyone, I thought of Sims, because he would have been the one guy that would have been, you know, really proud and happy for me, and would have called me up. And so I was sorry that he wasn't around to, you know, witness that, because he was, I'm sure if any writer, artist you can talk to, he was, you know, just everyone's biggest supporter. He was kind of a teacher to the end, you know.
Sims had so many ideas. He had the most youthful outlook. He was eternally young. He should have been doing books for at least the next 20 years. But it wasn't to be, and we were lucky to have worked with him as much as we did. I mean, what a talent, and what a presence, and what a great guy. So Sims, if you're listening, we miss you every day.
So I'd really like to thank the Texas Bluebonnet Committee. This is a real honor. Sims would be very proud, I know. Sims, our favorite artist, Mensch, and we're really honored. Thank you.
And to everyone here tonight, seien gesund, and may you live to be 120. Thank you.